Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Artists in Residence Talk series. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today here at the Lear House Cultural Center, located in Simpington, the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territory of the Syilx Okanagan people, who have always cared for these lands, water, and air, and continue to do so today. I am very grateful to be here as a third generation settler on this beautiful land and to be able to call this place home, benefit from the many gifts that the land provides, and to be able to feel safe here because that is unfortunately not the case in many parts of the world right now. For those who don't already know me, my name is Serena Ibuchi. I work for the Penticton Arts Council as the Community Arts Manager, and I will try to be your host today. I am not much of a public speaker, so please bear with me. Um, so this talk series celebrates the artists in residence at the Similkameen Artist Residency and the Penticton and District Community Arts Council, giving artists at both institutions an opportunity to share their practices with the public. Today we have Tree Osman from our Artist in Residency program here. Tree has been an artist in residence here since January this year, but we've worked with you for much longer than that. Their love for animals led them to discover the art of fursuit making and the community around it, which I believe we get to hear a bit about today. So Tree will give about a 30-minute-ish talk about their work, and then we'll hopefully maybe have a bit of a Q&A session at the end. And for those who are new to the Lear House, I feel like everybody's pretty familiar, but okay. Oh, welcome. Awesome. So just a little PSA, restrooms are down the hallway. And if you need anything, I will be sitting right there in the audience. You can just poke me on the shoulder and I will point you in the right direction. And before I babbled on too much longer, I will pass it over to Tree.
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine. I'm good. We're good.
Take it over.
Okay. Hello there, mostly family and friends who have probably heard me talk about this, but I'm going to get even more in depth today. You get to learn about the process of making these and what led me to start making these. My name is Tree Ostman, as Serena has lovely pointed out. I'm 23 years old and I have lived in Penticton for a good chunk of my life. I'd say collectively, the most time I've spent here. Um, mm. I am a member of the LGBTQIA community. I am non-binary and queer, and yeah, we're gonna get into this today. So, the first thing that I ask people when I introduce what I do for a living is, do you know what a furry is? Because that makes it a lot easier to explain if they know. But if they don't, then I'll probably run through something like this. So, what is a furry? That is a very good question. And it is not just costumes. It is and not necessarily an identity, but a term that people use for themselves if they find themselves in the community. So, you got your average Joe here, and maybe they watched Robin Hood as a kid. And maybe they went, that fox is, I don't know, that's awesome. Um, or maybe you're a little younger and you watched Zootopia, or you were into comics, or you were into games that had featuring anthropomorphic characters. And that's largely what the fandom is based off of. It's kind of different to other fandoms, whereas we don't really focus on one particular franchise. It's kind of more like a concept. Um, and it's very tied to self-expression, which is what drew me in. Um, this is Locust, and this kind of like a mascot for myself almost, a character that I express myself through um, in performance and in art. Um, there's some people have crazy lore about their characters, and some people are just like, yeah, that's just me as a cat. It's pretty simple. Um, I guess I started out with as a kid. Furry is something that shows up in early childhood most of the time. I've always been really into dressing up, especially as animals or ponies or whatever else piqued my interest at the time. And I was also encouraged to make my costumes and create art all the time as a kid. Um, yeah, so I guess it kind of evolved from there. It started out as just fun costumes. And then in 2023, previously I'd been aware of this community, but I wasn't like into the community just yet. I was on the edges, you know. I was in I was very much into animal fiction as like a in books and in movies and TV. My Little Pony is a lifelong long obsession. You can see this is me dressed as Nightmare Moon, which is one of the characters from the show as a child. And I remember that helmet was very hard to make out of tinfoil. It'd be fun to recreate an old costume of mine like that, see how much improvement I've gotten. Um, this is a unicorn mask that I made also in 2023. Um, and this is partial inspiration for my drag persona, which this isn't about that today, but I do drag as well. And that does sort of tie into being a furry because I am a unicorn man. And I have a tail, so um anyway, but in 2023 I met someone in this community and I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. And then he let me try on his custom made fursuit mask. This is the guy. His name's Jesse. He's from Soyuz, and we met at a Pride event in 2023. And I thought, wow, that's a really cool mask. And then he let me try it on at a Halloween party, and that was the end of it. That was the end of me being normal. From that day forward, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm into this. This is fun. I want to get into this and make my own because I was pretty bored and I didn't really have a job at the time. So I thought, what better use of my time than crafting the one and only right here. This was my first head. I'm still pretty proud of it. I think it turned out really great for a first attempt. And we're going to go into how I made this very shortly. Um, but this, like, I don't know, it opened up a new aspect of self-expression for me. I it's I don't know. I think it's kind of stupid, but I think that's also the point. You know, it's a character that I don't have to be serious in, and I don't know. It's fun. Like if you've ever worn a Halloween costume and thought, "Wow, this is a good time. I can just be like a pirate or whatever." Or if you're into theater and you get to play a character that you enjoy playing, it's like that, but it's your own character that you had all the say in. I don't know. It's great. Um, okay, so now we're gonna move on to how these things are made. Sorry that this is scary. They look a little scary when they don't have skin on. Um, this one, is not on there because it's not done, so I can't show you the process. But this is how it starts. Here's the camera. This is how it starts. It's upholstery foam, so it's really squishy and durable, and then you carve it down into the shape that you want. Mostly hot glue. Some people do use contact cement, which is what is used for like professional mascot costumes. But if you're people don't wash their mascot costumes. And if you wash contact cement a whole lot, it starts releasing fumes again. So it's generally not advised to use for fursuits because you're going to want to wash these a lot more than a someone who has a mascot costume would. They should, but that's besides the point. So that once this is done, then we move on to the fun part or the painful part. I go back and forth, and that is patterning. So it starts out really confusing. You put a bunch of tape on this head, cover it in duct tape. If it's symmetrical enough, you can get away with just the one side. And then usually these are based off of a pre-existing character, whether you were commissioned to make it or if you're commissioning it yourself, you'd probably get some sort of character sheet put together to show where the markings will go and what color and all that sort of stuff. And then you transfer the pattern over to fabric, usually fur, but some people use fleece, some people use felt, some people use minky, which is this really soft plush material. It's like what squishmallows are made out of. I choose fur. It's just easier to work with. And then if you're good with the machine, you can get away with sewing it on the machine, but I just hand sew all of it. And it's tedious, but it's fun. It's kind of relaxing. You get into a groove and you only stab yourself maybe a few times. And also you burn yourself a few times with the hot glue. My saying is, ow, hot glue, hot and needle sharp. And I never learn. I still stab myself all the time. So I'm just going to remind you what these looked like in their beginning stages. Um, we got the holes for the eyes, and there's also usually a hole for the mouth. At least there should be. It would be hard to breathe if not. And then, bam, you put fur on that thing. And that's pretty much all these down here. The fur is a mixture of sewn and glued on. Like you sew all the bits together first and then you glue them on. Um, Also with hot glue. The eyes are made of mesh that is painted, usually by hand, but some people get it printed onto the mesh, which is very fancy, and I'm not that fancy. I prefer the hand painted look. There's several different eye styles, but I've only ever tried two of them. I've done this glossy looking eye, which has like a plastic dome over it. There's still mesh underneath it, but it looks, well, I wouldn't say that's realistic. That's not really what a cat looks like, but in terms of eyes, it's got that sheen. And then the other style I use is two-dimensional, like 2D eyes, which are just flat on the face. But some people do 3D eyes, which are kind of inset. So when you move your head, the eye kind of follows you in a weird, creepy way, which is maybe why you're afraid of mascot costumes. Um, yeah, let's just do a little back and forth again so you can see how fun. How fun is that? Um, this is, I'd say, all of the fursuits I've made, including the work in progresses. So the first one up there, the skull looking thing, that was from before, when I was in denial that I liked this stuff. It's like, this isn't a fursuit. It's just a costume. It was a fursuit. It was definitely, it had fur, it had foam. It followed a tutorial. Not really. I kind of slapped it together. It is no longer with us because it was not fun to wear. Uh, I think I scrapped it for the fur and I used it for another project. Um, and then the first one I made, again, like I said, was Locust, and that was a lot of learning. The first paws, yeah, they come with paws as well. And sometimes they have full suits too. I forgot to mention that. I haven't made one yet, but the material to make one is on its way, and I'm excited to give that a crack. But it got little paws and tails. Um, the first paws I made were borderline unusable. I used like clay on top instead of this plush material, and so they would just fall off sometimes. I'd lose a bean while I was partying or something. It was a problem. So Locust looks really good. That's this guy. But underneath there's quite a few issues. Like you can't really breathe very well in them. And then I kind of had to step up with this is macaroni. This was the first fursuit well, actually no, the second fursuit I ever sold. That one was made just for fun, based on a random design that I made. It wasn't intended to keep. I was going to sell it. That was the plan. And it took a little while, but eventually I found a local person here who connected with the character, and now I see them out and about sometimes having a good little time. That's me and Drag there with Macaroni. I also saw them at Pentacon, which was fun. Um, yeah, and my first commissioned suit was this one right here, which belongs to my good friend Maddie. She was the first person I met in the fandom outside of Jesse. Um, and we became very fast friends. And she was like, "That's really cool what you're doing. I want to commission you." And I was like, "Whoa, that's scary. I've only made two suits so far. You're gonna put your trust in me for that?" And it turned out great. I'm still very proud of that project. It's fully lined, so it feels really nice to wear. And we've gone to a convention together, which is where that photo is from. The furries have big conventions. Like they're very fun. We'll get back to that though. Um, the so yeah, that was the third one I made. And then I started on this guy, and as you can see by how he's kind of yellow now, it's been about a year since I've touched him. Because I got sidetracked with other projects, but his fur is here now. So I can actually put skin on him and he can come to life. Uh, um, so soon he will join the finished projects wall. And then we've got Robinia over here. That's this guy. He is a jackalope who doesn't have horns yet because I haven't made them yet. Um, and that was going to be a project that I was going to sell at the end of making it, and then I got attached. That's my problem. I name them, and then I'm like, okay, they're mine now. I don't want to sell this actually." So after that failed attempt at making one I could sell, I made this one. He's down there, which was based off of like a vintage Halloween cat vibe. So he's got a little bow around his neck and I don't know, big stupid face. I like him. And then I also got attached. So I might be keeping that one, but we'll see. We'll see. If it doesn't sell at my next convention, he's mine. Keeping him. I've also named him. His name's Seven. Um, so then I was like, okay, third time's the charm. And I started on this. You're probably gonna be like, "Oh, Tree, you can't say that you got attached again." And I have good news. I didn't because I made a design that I was like, "That's cool, but it's not for me." So that's my problem. I just have to make designs that I'm like, "Yeah, that's cool for someone else." Anyway, I'm pretty proud of how this one's coming out. It's mostly machine sewn, which is weird for me. I usually hand sew all of my projects, but I was in a rush for this one. I wanted to get it done before Light Up in Penticton because I wanted to wear it around. I had a lot of fun reactions to that. Lots of kids very excited. I had one lady, older lady, come up to me and she was like, "Can I get a picture with Mr. Fox?" I was like, "Yes, yes, you can." Um, and then the last one here is this one, which is my latest commission, which is my second commission, through someone in Kelowna who I met at a drag show. They found out that I do this and they're like, I want in on that. So that's going to be fun. I'm just waiting for a few more measurements before I can finish it off, but it'll be a bat. So you can see its little nose and its big ears. Um, okay, next, let's talk about, I guess this might be confusing or hard to explain, but I get a lot of gender envy from being a cat. Or gender euphoria. That's what I wanted to say. I get a lot of gender euphoria not being a person, which is something really weird to say. Um, but in back in 2018 was when I started experimenting with different pronouns, mostly online. And I did that through playing a character, like a character, but it was actually secretly just me as a cat, who went by different pronouns than I did at the time. And that kind of slowly evolved into using those pronouns outside of this little internet space that I'd curated for myself. And then eventually I made the fursuit, and at that point I was well out of the closet and happy with my gender. But this added a whole new layer to that. Just it's something about the gender ambiguity that I have wearing a costume like this. You know, you can't see who I am underneath. You can't make assumptions based on that. And usually when I'm in suit, I'm silent. So there's like two types of suiting. There's like the mascot style where you're quiet, you don't speak. And then there's like the character style where you're playing a character that you speak and you have a story. But I like to go kind of quiet in suit, unless a child is very scared, in which case I try to console them, which happens sometimes. Sometimes they're not very cute. Sometimes they're scary, to little kids and older people. Sometimes they're scared too. Um, this is just a compilation of photos of me at different various Pride events. There's me with a, oh yeah, I should probably get into these. So these, can you tell I prepared very much? These probably just look like a tail to you, but there's like so much more underneath this. So when I say I do this like full time, this is mostly what I work with. Um, I don't know if the camera can see that. Wonderful. So this is, I work for the company that makes these. And what I do is I make these interchangeable sleeves that go on a silicone base. And a lot of, we also get the comment a lot of times when people are ordering these that these give them gender euphoria, and I understand that. And my coworker does not understand that. He's like, "What do you mean you feel that this is gender? Just have to be there, I guess." This is my drag tail, but they are interchangeable. So let me just, there's a little pin. I didn't know there was like this. Yeah. There we go. And now we have this, and now you can see why we cover it with fur. It looks a little weird. But yeah, this is just poured silicone into a 3D printed mold. But this is like I think a seventh generation tail. We've gone through a lot of different designs, but this seems to be a pretty good design. It wags so smoothly. Um, and then we can put on another next sleeve. And this one's a little longer because it's meant for a cat character. There it is. Okay, the one I'm wearing here is the non-binary colors because I was at a trans and NB march. Um, and this is me with my friend Gavin, who is also a furry, but also a drag artist. That's mostly where we know each other from. Um, yeah, so that's it. It's weirdly correlated to my trans identity, and I love it. I love being weird. Um, so these are some pictures from the first like furry event. It was like a meetup in town at the Safety Village. And I don't know why we chose the Safety Village. None of us had bikes. I think the thought was it looks funny if a bunch of large animals are in a small replica of a city. This is us worshiping the tiny traffic light. It was chaotic and I didn't know anyone there. So it was, and then we all went to the host's house afterwards for pizza and it was really good. I mean, I couldn't complain. I was with a bunch of other weirdos that also do the weird things that I like. So we all got along on that basis. Oh, here's an example of one of those full suits that are really hot to wear. Like you can imagine, it's like a fur coat all over your body and also a helmet that you can't really breathe out of very well. It's an endurance sport, I think. Um, yeah, that was my first experience with the fandom in person, other than like a few handfuls of people. And then I went to San Francisco for 2 months, and I thought there's gotta be a bigger furry event somewhere going on. And that's where I went to, I think it was called Frolic. I can't remember. But these are all the photos I took with the people, except for that one. That one's from Pride Arts. No, that's from another furry convention. That was from Vancouver, in Vancouver, obviously. We like our puns. So I went to this completely alone, which was a little nerve-wracking in the big city. But my friend who was with me at the time was just under 21, so I had to go it alone. But it was fun, and I made some friends, as you can see. And there was this one guy who had his head on like the whole time. And he was also dancing the whole time, and I can only imagine the hell he was in. But he stuck it out. He was committed to the character. I didn't put a picture of him in here, unfortunately, but he looked sick. Um, and then here we are again. This is a big part of what I love about this community is that like there's a lot of arts focused and a lot of dancing and a lot of fun and a lot of creativity. This is a photo from a dance competition, which happens at every convention. It's become a big main event where, people dance in these elaborate costumes. I can only imagine that they're just like hyperventilating under there. So, oh my God. Um, yeah, I went to Vancouver, which was my big, like my most, like the biggest event focused on this that I've been to. And I want to reiterate that like this part of the community, the fursuits, it's what is plastered all over because that's like the most eye-catching part about us. But like a good amount of furries don't have a fursuit. Like they might want one, but some also might not want one. It's really dependent. A lot of people are fine with just having like a drawing of their character, because these can get pricey. If you're not making your own, they can get like up to 20K or more. I don't remember. I should have looked it up. But there was one that sold for an enormous amount of money a couple years ago, and I just can't fathom that. like having that. There's there's a common stereotype that furries are all rich, but no, we just work really hard because we want a stupid animal costume. You know, buy a car, no. Buy an animal costume, yeah. Um, here's the picture. Here's a couple pictures from local events here. This is Kelowna Comic Con, and that's Penticon here in Penticton. They're not focused around furries, but there are so many of us out there that we kind of find each other at these nerd events. And usually we have like a little meetup of some sort going on. This is like all of the local people, which is fun. It was fun to meet them and build community around that. Um, and oh my gosh, wow, I talked for just the right amount of time. There we go. Here's some pictures of me in community settings. You know the Puppet Brigade. I go out with them sometimes because this is sort of a puppet. I mean, not really, but they let me in anyway. Yeah, that was the light up, and that was Ignite the Arts 2023, I think. I don't know. That's where I met Maddie. I was in fursuit, and she was like, "Oh my God, that's sick." Okay, well, questions?
I have one.
Yeah.
From beginning to end, how long does it normally take you to make head and paws? If you had to guess, like minimum complexity.
Mm, working on it periodically, I think the time that I estimated for Buttercup, which was Maddie's suit, was about 2 months of on and off work. But I was also hand sewing a lot, and I've gotten a lot better with the sewing machine as I worked with JBT, Jay's Blinky Tails, because those are all made on the machine. So I've gotten a lot more confident using the sewing machine. But when I was hand sewing every little bit, it was taking a long time. But like, I'd say like I could probably get a head done in 2 weeks if I had all the material. A large part of the wait time as well is like waiting for materials to ship because they don't really sell fur in the fabric store anymore. It's sad. Um, yeah. Does that answer questions?
Yeah.
Hi, Mom. Hi, Mom.
These are amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a memory flash up that remember like thinking of all the conferences you've gone to with Model UN
Yeah.
and other things. And was there not a time that you went to a Model UN conference but you saw furries and you were like, I want to be at that conference or something?
So yes, I used to be in Model UN, which is Model United Nations, where a bunch of teenagers go and pretend to be, country leaders, which doesn't go very well usually. Um, so I went to this big conference in Seattle, and it's funny that you mention this because there was also a convention going on at the same time, and me and my friends were all at this restaurant, which was just outside of that hotel, the hotel the furries were at. And we're eating food, and all of a sudden, like this literal like brigade of reindeer people walk by because it's January, it's Christmassy still. And we all look over and we're like, what? And then I look it up and I'm like, yep, there's a furry convention going on just like a block away from us. So like on one side, you've got a bunch of teenagers in suits. And then on the other side, you have a bunch of adults in suits, but not the same kind of suit. um, and it's awesome that I got to see that one time because I'm actually going to that exact convention in January this year. So I will be on the other side of that now. I think it's way more fun than Model UN, let me tell you. Yes, the goal is to have these two sold. But if that one doesn't sell, it's mine. Because I love it. Yeah, so that's what I made the reindeer for, because I thought that's a fun little nod to that time that I saw like a bajillion reindeer outfits.
Now, when you go to these conventions, like, do you have ways to promote your work or like reach out and like, is it just Instagram or is it?
I primarily use Instagram as a way of promoting myself, but like a big platform amongst furries is Telegram, and I have my own. It's kind of like WhatsApp, but yeah, I don't know. And I've got like a channel on there that people can subscribe to see my artwork. And then there's also like a bunch of different group chats. There's probably one for this exact convention, like where you can communicate. But yeah, otherwise it's mostly just Instagram that I use. I also have a website, but it needs work. Yes.
Now, financially, I know you do this for the art, for the love of the community.
Mhm.
Is it something you'd consider if you were commissioned to do mascots for like sporting things?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that like traditional mascots are made cheaper though. So a lot of people will go to that instead because they're more mass produced, more streamlined, more made to fit a broader audience. Whereas these are usually tailor made. They're made to fit your head just right. They're made based on specific requests. But I do know that there have been some makers in the past that have taken on like mascot suits, and honestly, they look way better. Not to bash on mascot suits, but we've got it down. Um, but they are our original inspiration, so I guess. Actually, I don't know which came first, chicken or the egg. But yes, I would consider that as a financially viable. I'm already making the bulk of my income on this, so if I could just make even more of that, but on my own, because this is for a company, the tails.
Can you put one of your like business cards in every one you put out, sell it?
I probably could. I could probably do something. He also has a big Telegram chat where every first of the month is like self-promotion day. So you just put whatever you're making out into the world. I mean, you can self-promote anytime by just posting your art, but that's like specifically promote yourself. Yeah. Hi.
There's a curative part of me it's a bit mind-boggling that you can wash these pieces.
Yes.
The things is very interesting.
Yes, so depending on how they're made, they have different wash requirements. Some people make them extremely sturdy out of like 3D printed materials and like fancy stuff like that, and they can just throw theirs in the machine, which I would never do with one of mine. I would have to like severely stress test that first before even considering that. But for the most part, it's a lot of spot cleaning. If it gets real nasty, you can give it a bath, just in some warm, soapy water, and then like just make sure it gets dry, like put it on a fan. Um, or there's these little carpet cleaners, and they just like shoot out a little bit of water and soap, and you can just and it vacuums it out too. So that's what a lot of people also use for their suits, which will get a lot cleaner than a spot treatment. But usually after one wear, I'll like spray it with like an alcohol or something to disinfect it, and then spot clean it. Yeah. Yeah. And for like a full suit, which gets like your whole body sweat in there, usually it's the bathtub, unless it's like really well made, in which case you could put it into the washing machine on cold with like a delicate fabric setting, or I don't know, and then hang to dry. You can't put it in the dryer. Heat will destroy the fibers really quick, make them stick together, and it'll look all matted. Yeah. Any more questions?
Where can people find you online?
Oh boy. Mostly Instagram. I have The Gay Tree and Me on Instagram is my main art platform. And then I've just recently started a second Instagram specifically for my fursuit making, which is called Scrap Cat Studios, because I don't always have the money for premium materials, so I'm very scrappy with what I can find. I'm always using scraps from my work and I don't know, finding things in unconventional places. Like the first, where did I, the stuff that I found to make the face, it's really soft. And surprisingly, I found it at a dollar store. Yeah, it was just like these little offcuts, like this big of like plushy material. And I was like, that would work. And then I wouldn't have to shave the fur fibers down. It's so soft. And then I think I got this stuff from Walmart. And I've since updated the neck, but it was pretty scraggly because I also used some cheap stuff from Walmart. But you can get pretty scrappy with it, you know? I've seen some younger makers who don't have the money make them out of paper. And they like cover it in duct tape so it's waterproof because like the big scare with like I don't know, paper fursuits were like they're gonna mold. They're gonna get wet and mold, but they've just plastered it in tape so they're like airtight. And I tried to make one and it wasn't pretty. These kids are really talented. I don't know how they make paper look that good, but I failed. I'll stick to the traditional method, thanks. But, I gotta admire their ingenuity. Yeah.
You ready to wrap up?
Hmm?
Ready to wrap up?
I think so.
Okay.
Wow.
So,
Thank you.